Secretary Hobbs says that right now there are just under 450,000 outstanding ballots in the state of Arizona, the bulk of which are here in Maricopa County.
Everyone, we will get started in a few minutes. We're going to trying to get a couple people connected. I want to welcome everybody to the meeting, and if you haven't done so yet, please add something to the chat about what you're going to be doing this weekend. It's going to be beautiful.
Okay. Hi, John. Sherry, got the link.
Good. Sorry about that, Fred.
Well, I don't know what.
It's been a constant issue.
Yeah, no idea. No idea. I suspect it may be going to my MREA email on somebody's list.
Okay.
But I never gave you that email to begin with, but it probably just pops up on somebody's computer.
Kathy, I'm a little jealous that you're going to be by Lake Superior, which sounds like you're always by Lake Superior. I grew up next to Lake Superior, so I'm very jealous of that. Beautiful. Okay, we got a pretty good amount of people now. It seems to slow down in coming into the meeting. I want to welcome everybody and thank you for putting in the chat. It's nice to hear some of the people are going to be mostly getting outside, it sounds like. I hope no one's stuck inside working too long this weekend, but it's one of our last chances to really soak in that beauty. I'm going to switch over to our agenda today just to walk through that with folks. You all got a copy of an agenda attached to the calendar invite today, but we did add a piece. If you look at after, and these times, of course, are approximate as we always are, but after the 5:35 final report review, we're going to have a review of the funding runs by Tom Melcher, just to bring people up to speed on what might have changed there. But then the rest of the agenda is, as you saw before, we'll have just some next steps with what will happen with the report, and we'll just acknowledge each other for the great work we've done. So any questions about the agenda or what's going to happen tonight, or if anybody wants to add anything to the agenda? Okay. Well, we can walk right into the final report. You should all have a copy of this as well. That was attached to the invite, and it's brought together all of the different pieces that we've talked about over time, and has slowly been put together and reviewed and edited and changed as we have dictated. So we're going to walk through that. You have the opportunity to ask any questions or make any comments. But Fred, I'm going to turn it over to you just to highlight some changes since our last meeting from what we talked about.
Thank you, John. And nearly everything was in the 5.1 version, which was distributed October 26th. And I really want to thank Patty Matern and Wendy Hatch for getting this in a final version that you see tonight. Couple of changes. If you go to the table of contents, John, it occurred to me that the principles for education funding and levy equalization and implementation parameters were getting kind of buried in the report. And they really, in the work group at the end that dealt with the basic formula and formula simplification, they were kind of the principles that created a new system of education. And so I pulled them out as systemic reform. And then you can see all the recommendations. They're organized a little differently. They're organized in the way that it fits the data run that Tom does, because so much of the funding cost differentials affects the operating referendum. It was better to front load that. And so if you just kind of scroll through this page so people can see that all of the 46 recommendations are there, go down to the next page. And facilities are generally treated by the legislature separately as a separate chapter, and so those are there. Then an impact of recommendations is pretty much the same as before, maybe a little detail added. And finally, there are the appendices, which are now in the final report. So that's the changes in the table of contents. If you would slip to page 9, John. Okay, we have changed the map now to MDE colors, okay, from lightest to darkest, and these also work in grayscale. So if people print this off in grayscale, it'll show from lighter to darker. And if you click on the View Interactive Map, you'll be taken to a website where the map will show up on your screen. It's a Google Map document. And if you click on any district, you will see the actual number here of the operating referendum. In the final chapter, in the conclusion, there's one for total revenue, there's one for levy change, and you can actually see the percentage change. And so this is a feature that will be when this is online. Obviously in a printed document that doesn't work, but if people are looking at this online, the interactive map feature will work. The next change is page 25, John. Okay, when we are rolling 7 formulas in, a lot of which had to do with previous reform efforts and equity aid and tax-based replacement aid, we did a double check to make sure that there were no losers, because the 127 districts roughly are going to see a levy decrease, but the rest are going to see a levy increase because of what the board will then authorize for levies. But we wanted to make sure that nothing happened without a board's control that would increase their levies. So if you scroll down just a little bit, John. There you go. So there were 4 districts for which tax-based replacement aid, which was the change in 2000, okay, when we went from all property value for operating referendums to simply the operating referendum and excluded seasonal recreation and ag. There were a number of districts that received what was called tax-based replacement aid, okay? We're fortunate. This actually worked pretty well. We just have 4 districts which would be negatively impacted. 2 of them are fairly minor, but 2 of them are significant. So I wanted to call this to the attention of anybody using this report, that these 4 districts be treated differently, or at least have a clause that holds them harmless until it disappears at some point in the future. I think the 2 that are smallest will. The 2 that are largest probably will be there until the next large reform effort. It's just, that's the way it is. If you go to page 44, John. We're getting there. Okay, Don McNeil submitted that paragraph about the important role of paraprofessionals. And so that was put in there. Also, at some point in the document, I can't remember where, I think it's on the ESP, right at the first paragraph there, I say or paraprofessionals, because people refer to these very important people that are working in education in different words. We want to make sure it was inclusive. So thank you, Don, for your input there. Page 58. Down toward the bottom, keep going. Yep. I think we all wish to acknowledge the commissioner for calling this group together. It's a risk to bring people together, but it's also a great input on what are the needs for education. And then there were people who John and I felt needed to be called out for special attention. And I think, John, anything you want to say there on that paragraph?
I think it is important to really call out some of the work that was done. I mean, all the little meetings in between these meetings really came together to try to pull everything in place. And our co-chairs did a great job with trying to put some structure to this, and the commissioner is always attentive to it. And Fred, I really appreciate you just pulling together all of the different pieces together in this report, and Tom, you and Tom worked so hard with the finance pieces and the report pieces, and really was a lot of work. putting this all together. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, John. Yeah, I think it's an important labor, very important. And we can go through any of the attachments if anybody would like to look at any of them. You did receive the report probably very late this afternoon, so you probably didn't have a chance to look at them, but if there's any attachments, we could go through them. You've actually seen the documents before. They're just organized for the report. You may not have seen attachment F, but that's a report having to do with QComp. We referred to it in the document. So I want to make it easy for anybody who took this document and tried to work with it, that they didn't have to go searching for that report from 2015. So that's why that's Appendix F. So that's basically changes from 5.1, which was sent out October 26th. And I appreciate all the subgroups for getting their work in and putting this in a format that was workable. And so we can go to any section people want, or we can move on. John, it's your call.
Does anybody have any comments or questions or want to highlight anything?
Super work, everybody. Really nicely done, Fred. I thought the report came together really well. I like what we've done.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Don. And just a little aside, the executive summary is written more for a general audience, people interested in education, but maybe not really digging into the weeds. Then the recommendations get kind of wonky, kind of specific, and then the conclusion kind of draws back and looking forward, kind of draws back to a broader thing. I'm thinking there are folks who are going to maybe look at the executive summary, look at the table, and jump to the final chapter and see, okay, what did it all amount to? So that's kind of how it was kind of put together.
In the chat, Kathy is giving you a round of applause, Fred, for all the work.
Well, thank you, Kathy. Thank you. I know a lot of people worked hard. I was at part of those special ed work group meetings, subgroup meetings early, and they were really working hard on the special ed issues, and as other subgroups were on their issues. So yeah, thank you, Kathy.
Anyone else with any comments or questions? Okay. Well, if we go back to our agenda, I think we have some time to look at some of the changes that happened for the runs that Tom has spoken to us about. So why don't we turn it over to Tom Melcher.
Thank you, John. I don't know if we actually want to call up the runs, or I can just talk through what the changes are. That maybe that's a quicker way of doing it.
I may not have the most current in front of me, but I mean, you could certainly share your screen if you wanted to point something out. Otherwise, you can just talk about it.
Yeah, let me just talk about it, and then if there are questions, I can go into that in more detail. So all of the tables that are in the final report are backed up by district by district runs. We did district by district runs for almost all of the recommendations in the report. And we shared those runs with you and walked through them during the October 1st meeting. And since the October 1st meeting, we've had some minor changes in the runs, nothing substantive, but we found a few data issues. So the bottom line in the final runs and the numbers in the final report have dropped about 10 million from the numbers we used on October 1st. 10 million is not a big number in relation to the 2.5 billion or so that's in the report. But I can highlight for you where the changes occurred. The first one had to do with the calculation of the local education revenue for the kind of the charter school growth assumption. So we know that we'll be adding new charter schools between now and 2023. We have a factor built in for that. And we did an inadvertent calculation where that particular entity was given the same LER as a school district in addition to the charter school amount. So that overstated the funding for that one charter school, or the way we treated it, by about $10 million. So the bottom line is the runs were correct for all the individual charter schools, but on the report where we summarized the total for charter schools, it was overstated by 10 million because of the additional money that incorrectly went in on that line for the growth factor. The second change was that we inadvertently double counted the tax-based replacement aid impact of elimination of that aid, so that for those districts that get a lot of tax-based replacement aid, it's essentially districts that have a lot of farmland that had a big referendum back in around 2000. We were overstating the levy increase in the original runs, and that's been corrected. And then we had a small correction on the referendum aid guarantee that only affected a handful of districts. So the bottom line is the final runs are very close to the original runs. The bottom line numbers are down about 10 million from what we had, which is about 2 million in aid and about 8 million in levy. So the final runs are similar to the runs that we did earlier. So there's a lookup table. You can go type in the district number for any district you want to see, and it'll show you the impact of each of the recommendations. We've reorganized the lookup table so that it's in the same order as the report. So we've grouped the redefining basic revenue, and we've grouped all of the things related to closing the achievement gap together. So it's a little easier to read that now side by side with the report. And we also still have the two reports or tabs in that spreadsheet that show the breakdown of the revenue for each individual district, and that do subtotals for what we call strata, which are the large, medium, and small rural districts, the central cities, and the charter schools. And so you'll be able to see kind of what the revised totals are for those. And we also have a tab on the levy. So it's very similar to the runs you had on October 1st, but we just wanted you to be aware that there were some minor changes, nothing substantive, just correcting data errors. We're still working on getting that cleaned up. It needs to be made accessible before it can be posted to the Department of Education website. So we're working on that, but the information will be available soon. So that's all I've got, unless there are any questions.
Are there any questions that anyone wants to share, or any comments? Okay. Great. Just a thank you for you, Tom, from Bernie, in the comments.
Thanks, Bernie.
All right, going down the agenda. Now we are going to go to the co-chairs so they can just officially, will ceremoniously hand over the report to the commissioner.
Good evening, everyone. This task force has focused on addressing education funding issues facing our state, including improving the adequacy and stability of pre-K through grade 12 education funding, prioritizing equity, simplifying the education funding, preserving local control, closing the achievement gap, promoting high achievement for all students, and directing resources to high quality teaching and learning. Over the past 14 months, this group has reviewed the various state funding streams with the goal of identifying areas of reform and reaching consensus on recommendations.
My apologies, I've muted. And with this, I'd just like to add, Sherry and I would both like to really sincerely thank Fred and Tom for their incredible efforts to pull all of this together for us. You know, their collective experience and their highly skilled leadership has been an incredible asset to our work. Part of what makes our effort with this entire year-long experience unique is that everything we've pulled together intentionally brings together funding goals of districts in greater Minnesota with those of metro area districts. If we really want to have an impact at the legislature, we've got to continue to find ways to unify our voice. And I'll just say that we know that a report of this nature is never going to be perfect. It just can't be, right? There's too many moving parts. What I and Sherry both feel really strongly about is that the work of all of the different committees has been highlighted here and will be put down in history as sort of a point in time view of pressure points in the state of Minnesota in the year 2020. And I would just like to state that our commissioner has a unique challenge to face right now. We're all bringing these recommendations to her, and she's got to face all of the political lenses that come together. We know that this final document, if you add up the total of all of the requests that are in here, is incredibly expensive. But we all together collectively believe it's time to prioritize education in the state of Minnesota. The losses in funding we have seen over the previous decades are inexcusable, and it's time to stop that. We are well aware there may be some in the legislature and others who think, what, this isn't feasible, but that's okay. This report is so comprehensive, so well done that people can pick and choose and dig into it and read the research. These committees have put hundreds of hours into this work, and our committees are going to have really amazing reports, and people are going to find a lot of really amazing information. Again, about a point in time, a pressure point with state funding in the state of Minnesota in the year 2020. So with that, I challenge you to not overthink the lack of perfection and instead appreciate the incredible knowledge and thoughtfulness that is brought to this report, because it is quite an amazing document. And again, Fred and Tom have been amazing in helping us pull this together, but you all brought your ideas, your thoughts, and your analysis of the current situation to the table. And they're now here marked in history forever, because this is a historical document and it will be really meaningful, not only in the short term, in the long term. And even though we know we're in a financial situation with the COVID crisis, things may not be adopted in this current biennium. Some may be, but some may not be. This document is going to be referenced for years to come. So thank you for all of your leadership in that regard. And Sherry and I have really appreciated all the learning that's come together from all of your leadership. So thank you for that. And with that, Sherry and I are here to present it. Sherry, do you want to add? We're presenting this to our commissioner.
So now on behalf of the members of the task force, we present 80-20-10, Bringing Equity to Minnesota's School Finance System, the report of the School Finance Working Group, to Commissioner Ricker.
Thank you both so much. Really, thank you, everyone. Let me just say that on behalf of Minnesota's almost 900,000 students who you came together to think about and work for, I want to thank everyone on the working group for all of your work this past year and 2 months or so. Your perseverance, even before a global pandemic, was inspiring. We had snow and weather even before the pandemic, and then your perseverance in the face of the pandemic was absolutely inspiring. Your continued commitment. I want to point out that our co-chairs just about a year and a half ago or so, when I talked to them about co-chairing this work, already had very, very full-time jobs, and said yes to this because they saw the work and the aspirations they had for students right in front of them in the state of Minnesota, and they brought that work and that aspiration to this table, and to their thoughtfulness in putting together these agendas and making and committing, even in the midst of their already full-time jobs in a global pandemic. And I am really grateful. And so today I get to receive your report, which includes thoughtful recommendations for our school finance system from this entire working group. And I want to thank you all for all of the time you also put in knowing that you were thinking of those students you serve, those children you serve, those school systems you serve, on it as, again, part of your full-time work, and then coming to add your expertise, your questions, that inquisitiveness, that wondering, and those ideas to all of this work. So thank you for those thoughtful recommendations for our school finance system. And as I review your recommendations, I am looking forward to, of course, sharing them with my colleagues at the Department of Education, and I will be sharing your report with Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan for their consideration. And you heard it from Christine and Sherry, and we heard it from Britta Rattan, who joined us for an earlier working group meeting this fall from MMB. And we know our state financial situation is very different than when the working group was first convened. I appreciate your acknowledgement of that reality when you're presenting these recommendations. And I appreciate you persevering through that reality as you continue to keep the students we are serving at the center of your aspirations. And I want to thank everybody very much. And John, I'll hand it back to you for more acknowledgements and details.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I will turn it over now to the co-chairs again, just to offer their acknowledgements to the work of this group.
We really just want to thank the members of the task force for their collaboration and support of this work. We appreciate the governor's attention to this topic. Student resources should not be determined by zip code. And this group really dug into that. We put equity as one of our main focus throughout the work we did. Thank you to each of the members for your work, not only in these large group meetings, but also in the hours you spent in subcommittee meetings. We know how many hours that was. We know that the pandemic has created a difficult environment for the delivery of these recommendations. Our hope is that the recommendations will be considered for long-term implementation. Thank you, everyone.
And I'll just add, I have grown so much this year in ways I didn't expect to. I think about the amount of sidebar conversations I've had with so many of you. And I've not only challenged some of my previous held positions on things, but I've heard perspectives that I hadn't heard in a while. And it's really made me think about what is actually my stance on different topics. I've been challenged. I've been forced to think differently about things. And I really value that. You know, there's been so many times I've been saying, like, why did I get myself on this committee? I really be honest with that. But I have appreciated how much I've personally grown from this experience. And I sure hope that so many and the rest of you feel the same way. You know, we sometimes don't agree on things, but we sure are growing by having those conversations with each other. And so I know Sherry and I have connected about that. Sherry and I didn't know each other before this event either, and this experience together. And I have no doubt we will continue to be colleagues and folks who we can call on for many years to come. And I hope we can all feel that way, especially given all the things we've been through. We went into this not ever even thinking a pandemic was on our horizon, and here we are. And yet, what an amazing plan has been put together here. Recommendations with all kinds of different pieces of elements to it that really highlight what is happening in Minnesota in the year 2020. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you. I also wanted to give the members a chance to say anything you'd like in this last meeting of our year-long process. It's been a lot of time together. So anybody who wants to say anything.
I apologize, John. I have to say one more thing.
Okay.
Sherry and I both meant to bring this up and we failed to do so. John, you have been amazing. I will tell you, there's so many times John has pulled together our preview chats about what's coming up on the agenda. He is the most generous, humble, amazing person. He has taken every suggestion we've given him and he's implemented it. And he has been incredibly supportive, never judgmental. What an amazing person. And I just want to thank you for that. And Sherry, I know you want to add something to that because John has been the glue for us. It's been just amazing.
We often came at him in those meetings with ideas from all over the place, and he would pause and suddenly just organize it. And we really appreciate that. So thank you for all of that work of just keeping us on target, reminding us that this is the goal we have for the next meeting, and moving this group forward.
I'll just add, I really think a lot about people. I pay attention to this a lot. John is somebody with a really strong moral compass. He's somebody who not only does the work really well, but ethical, moral, just an amazingly thoughtful person. And we're just so grateful, John. Thank you for that.
Wow, that is, that's very nice of you all to say. I did not expect all of those things. So thank you for saying those things. It was my pleasure to really do this work with this group. When I was first asked about facilitating a school finance group, I was like, okay, I don't know much about that, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway. But I've learned a lot about school finance in the process, so I really appreciate that. And it's been a pleasure to do work with everybody. But I do want to open it up to any group members who would like to comment about anything.
Hello, John. Thank you. On behalf of Education Minnesota and all the students and members that we represent statewide, I appreciate all of the work that we've done together this year and your commitment to education in the state of Minnesota. We know that it is the foundation of a great state, and which we live in one. I'll go slightly political and say that yesterday was evidence of that for our state, and then I'll walk away from that. But I appreciate all the work that we've all done together and that some of the hard conversations. And I know, that I have been, and we've been adamant about some things that we believe are important. And we've had lots of conversations too with a lot of you. So thank you for all the work that we've done together.
Thanks, Bernie. Anyone else?
I just want to add a shout out to Don McNeil. I think Don maybe get the award for joining the most subcommittees. And, Don, I got to tell you, I have been so impressed by your leadership, your curiosity, and your willingness to learn. And, driving over and meeting you at your office and talking to you, you have had an honest curiosity and willingness to learn that I've not seen. And I think I've seen your name on more subcommittees than anybody else. So I just appreciate that so much. Thank you for that.
Thank you. There's so many of you, including you, Christine, that took some time to talk to me offline. In my world, my wife and I have 3 children, 2 with severe disabilities, and we run in communities of other parents that have children with disabilities and challenges. Sometimes we feel like we're critiqued, and we have this saying that, hey, we're still perfect. We're perfect. And when somebody was talking about our report earlier, I looked at it and said, well, I don't think we can critique this report too much. This is a perfect report in my world. It's because we figured out where the problems were. We took the data, we addressed them. We know what the problems are. We know how to fix them. And now we can make the recommendations. It'll find its way over to the legislature. And then I look forward to meeting you all over there and talking to some representatives. And we may not get it all adopted at one time, but we're going to come close to it. And at least the kids are going to be a little bit better off after all of these efforts we put in over the last 14 months. So thanks to all of you for taking some time offline and working with me and helping me figure out where those problems are so we can get them addressed. Hey, you're all perfect in my world.
And I just want to piggyback off Dawn, because I know that being parents, you often think that you're just a parent, and that your perspective isn't important. And so we at PTA talk about how lucky we are to be included, and to have Commissioner Ricker and the co-chairs, ask for our voice in this, and is just really an amazing opportunity for us as parents. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you. Anyone else who wants to make a comment?
If I could just add that nothing makes me happier than a great spreadsheet. And Dr. Melcher never fails to impress in all the work that he did for our special education subcommittee, along with Paul Farron and others. That was probably some of the most meaningful work I've been a part of as a school finance person. That was just a really great opportunity, and I want to thank those who are a part of it. And I don't know if you can hear in the background, where my office is a corridor, and we often have sirens go by, and I say, oh gosh, it's the budget police for the school district. And they're here right now. But I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to be a part of this and echo the comments regarding the collaboration. I didn't know several of you well. I knew of you, but having the opportunity to dialogue and really collaborate on this was really special for me. And I just want to do a special shout out to John Carlson who represented MASBO, the Business Managers Association. I sat in on their legislative platform work last week, and the thoughtfulness of this group will only be echoed and emphasized by others who will go along and take parts and talk through some of those things that are really critical. And so thank you all so much for the opportunity. And thank you especially to those that did all the legwork to put this document together.
This is Tom Melcher. I'd like to just do a quick thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have worked with you so closely. There was a lot of thoughtful work that went into this report, and I think we have a really good report. And I'd like to do a shout out to Daley Lehman and Paul Farron in our school finance division that did a lot of work on the background for the report. Thank you.
And I'd like to add my thanks to Tom and Daley and the program finance folks and the early learning people also, the folks in the department, Commissioner, who really helped out behind the scenes to make this accurate and add substance was really helpful in all of the subgroup. And thank you so much for the kind words, Christina Sorio. I mean, it's kind of a good thing I did retire June 30th, so I actually had time to do this. It was, I just kind of stepped into a place where I was needed, and I appreciate that. Before we wrap up, John and Commissioner, I'd like you to clarify for members on the committee and members that are watching who may have received these reports, when will they become public? When can people share them with their membership organizations? Because as Kathy Erickson said, organizations are looking at this, getting ready for the 21 session, as well as legislators like Representative Chairman Davney on the committee. So the question is, when is this public? When can people feel free to share this outside of this committee meeting?
Thanks, Fred. I would say, when this document will go on our website, it'll probably, it'll take a few days because we do make sure it goes through an accessibility process. And I would say as soon as it is on the website, then it would be ready and accessible to share.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right, and anybody else? Any other last comments before we turn it back over to the commissioner?
I'm just going to throw one more thought out there. I really want to thank our commissioner, Mary Catherine, for literally seeking everybody's perspective. And I'll be honest, and Mary Catherine can attest to this, I went, hold on, the first few meetings, all we're doing is teaching school finance. If people haven't built school finance budgets, and you know what? It's been a joy and a pleasure. And I have learned so much. I've been put in check. I've had to think about my own thinking about things, and I've grown as a person, and I value her leadership in that regard. She is very much somebody who cares about the voice of the people. And I value that so much as well. I know that's a big part of my leadership. And I am so grateful I felt like at the beginning of this whole process, how is this ever going to come together in some final recommendation? And here it is. So I'm just going to thank our commissioner for really taking time to value all voices and make sure all voices are being heard, because if we don't do that, then we've got nothing, right? So I just really appreciate that. And I just want to thank our commissioner for that. And that's pretty important. I am positive that commissioners across the country are not all doing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I appreciate that. And I am really grateful for how seriously everyone took the invitation to participate in this school finance working group. And then I am incredibly grateful everyone took the additional invitation to expand your kitchen cabinet to make sure that you were creating a group you were regularly checking in with. I know for some of you that was a very formal group. Perhaps you served on an executive board, or had you were here as a representative with the MASBO example, and others formed kitchen cabinets made up of their own cross section of people, and you did that. And I appreciate, again, you, as we thought of those case studies we wanted to bring into this work so that we would then add even more voices, right? So there were your voices and the voices of the people you pulled together around you, and we added more voices. I am really grateful for the additional school systems you volunteered to bring to the table to share their case studies so that we could consider their perspectives as we were doing this work, so that we could continue to do that. And I appreciated those of you who brought research to the table as well, as one more voice, that voice of whether it was that voice from academic research, that voice from historical research, all of that mattered. And it made this working group of 24 individuals that much more powerful. To Christine's point, that we can look around, we can ask whose voice is not here, and we can find an avenue to make sure that that voice gets to the table, and that voice gets heard by the subgroup, gets heard by the full group. And I appreciate everyone taking that so seriously. I want to also make sure I thank a lot of the folks who supported me, and I will give an additional shout out in addition to these co-chairs who really made sure that their co-chairing was an active co-chairing, not a figurative or ceremonial co-chairing, who really shaped agendas, who shaped some of those, those case studies that came forward to us, who thought of additional layers of information that needed to be shared or ideas that needed to be shared, pushed for additional work to happen in subcommittees to be brought back to the whole group. Again, did this in addition to their already very full-time jobs that they had. In addition, I also want to make sure I thank Fred Nolan for this additional work. I know, Fred, you said that you retired, and so therefore you had some time to really help work with all of the members of the working group to put this together. But I know you were putting in that time before you retired as well. I have had the privilege of seeing Fred operate in a number of different scenarios. I have had the opportunity to see him at the Capitol advocating on behalf of students and school communities in Greater Minnesota. I have had the opportunity to see him at MREA meetings, connect with members, listen to them, weave their ideas from different corners of the state together to be an inspirational proposal. And then I had the opportunity to see him on the school finance working group, listen to everybody, use a lens of inquiry in the work. And it was an absolute privilege to work with him in this capacity as well. And I have to thank Dr. Tom Melcher. I have a long history with Dr. Tom Melcher that he doesn't have with me, because I got to hear his name all the time when I was a new teacher activist. And I would, we were in tough budget times back then, and I would hear, I would hear perhaps the representatives from the St. Paul School District say, well, Dr. Melcher says this, and Dr. Melcher reminded us of that. And I was like, who is this Dr. Melcher? And then I got invited by Commissioner Cassellius to serve on a school finance working group. And at the beginning of the very first meeting, this gentleman stands up and introduces himself as Tom Melcher. I just about gasped, I think, because I was like, oh my gosh, I get to meet Dr. Tom Melcher. And I got to be led through a school finance working group with that support. So I know how you feel in your seats, how to be supported by someone who doesn't just know school finance, because he does. Everyone in the state of Minnesota knows how well he knows school finance, but gets to see close up how much he cares about school finance and how much he recognizes that school finance can improve students' lives. And seeing that up close, I would say, is both thrilling and motivating. And so I want to thank him as well for dedicating his time to the school finance working group when he could also be going on extra bike rides or extra picnics outside. That is how much he cares about school finance and recognizes the power of the work you were doing and the real power of an equitable school finance system. So I want to say thank you. And I want to say thanks to John Gimple, who already, Christine and Sherry, I want to just concur with everything you said. And I just want to acknowledge that everyone on the school finance working group got to see the sort of attention and dedication that he offers to school support as well. And I am incredibly grateful. This work could not have been done without your facilitation, John. Your ability to track the details of this work, your ability to track the members of this work and make sure that folks were getting the materials they needed or had the WebEx connection they needed to have was remarkable and really, really grateful. And finally, I want to also thank someone whose name you probably saw in your inbox and really long time ago before we went to remote meetings. Hopefully you were greeted by her as you came to meetings, and that is my colleague in the commissioner's office at MDE, Maria Vincent. I used to say when I was pursuing my national board certification, that old Marlena Dietrich line, it's the friends you can call at 2 a.m. who matter. And when I was earning my national board certification, I realized it was the friends you could email at 2 a.m. who emailed you back who really matter. And I realized I have a colleague in Maria Vincent who is that colleague. When I would, pop up and think of a something or worry that you didn't have the document in front of you needed, or we needed to do just one more, maybe one more edit to something before getting it out to you. Maria was the one who made sure you got it in your hands, made sure you got these meetings on your calendars, who made sure I got to these meetings. It's so much more. Her attention to detail and her dedication to making sure that you had a fulfilling experience here and that you all felt supported meant a great deal to me, because all of you and the time you gave is not lost on me. It meant a great deal to me that you decided that you were going to invest your time and your talent and your inquisitiveness to make sure that school finance mattered to our students. So I want to thank you all so very much. And thanks for all the leadership everyone exhibited in every different way in this work. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Commissioner. So that brings us to the end of our year-long meetings and this meeting in particular. And I want to invite anyone to give feedback. You can send it to me. If any feedback on this whole process would be valuable. I also want to thank Maria too, because she really helped me out a lot in all of this work. And again, it was just really a pleasure to work with all of you, and I'm going to officially adjourn our meeting. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Please take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Great job.
Thank you.